Hey, I'm Dave Henning, and this is the Fresh Start Podcast, fresh ideas for business and personal growth. And I'm very excited to have my good friend Dave Foster with me again. We were together, Dave, like 2 years ago, and here you are back. You've got a brand new book. So, for our listeners and viewers' sake, let's maybe go back to the future here and just kind of touch base of how did this all begin, and what prompted you to do this.
Well, I think it all began with you, anyways, because you've got the absolute best introduction music ever for a podcast. I'm ready to do some Guitar Hero. I don't know about you. That's
I love
awesome,
it.
Dave.
Well, I was an
It is
old
good
rock
to
and
be
roll.
here.
I was an old rock and roll disc jockey, as well as a bunch of other things on radio for many, many years. So, gotta love the music, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. How did things start for me where I became this animal called a qualified intermediary? Who even knows what that is? In the early days, in the early 2000s, we used to joke with people and tell them when they asked what I did, I would say, I can tell you, but I'd have to kill you because nobody knew what it was. But
Yeah.
we discovered this, Dave, on our journey to freedom. My wife and I had this miraculous event. We had our first child, and you know
Yes.
exactly how it changes you.
Oh,
The
yes.
TV goes out the window, and you start to realize that the greatest commodity in your life is not money, prestige, power, or position. It's time. Time is so fragile and limited. We wanted to do nothing but spend it with that little guy and whichever's were going to come along after. So we were trying to figure out a way how to get off the corporate train to be able to take charge of our own time instead of clocking a time clock for someone else. And early on, we figured that real estate investment was going to be the best way to do it. And that secretly, although she was a Minneapolis city girl and I was a Kansas farm boy, we had this secret desire to go sailing on the ocean. So we decided to become real estate investors and go sail the ocean with our kids. That was a great dream until I did my first, what I would call a fix and flip, where you find a distressed property, you fix it up, you sell it, you make money. That's the theory. And I did pretty well until I went to my accountant's office at the end of the year. And he said, "Wow, do you owe a lot of taxes on this?" And I realized at that moment that every real estate investor has a silent partner, and his name is Uncle Sam. And Uncle Sam did better than I did on that property, believe it or not. That was frustrating. So he said, "Well, this is going to put our 10-year goal back to 20 or 30 or never years. So what can we do?" And it was right at that moment in time. I was a degreed accountant, so I'm kind of a nerd. I'm looking for ways to avoid tax, anyways. But it was right at that moment that the IRS lost a large lawsuit. And there was this thing called a 1031 tax deferred exchange that had been part of the tax code for 100 years, but was unable to be practiced by normal investors. And the IRS lost a lawsuit so that now normal investors like you and I were going to be able to do 1031 exchanges. And what they do is they allow a real estate investor to sell investment real estate, purchase new investment real estate of equal or greater value using a process. By doing that, they get to indefinitely defer paying the tax on the profit. Now, all of a sudden, instead of fixing a property, giving half my earnings to the IRS, trying it again, we were able to keep all of the income, including the tax, working for us. So the 10 years, and we did this transitioning from Colorado to Connecticut, where there's no warm water, to Florida, where finally it's worth sailing. And the entire way, we were doing 1031 exchanges and deferring tax and turning tax into tax free so that we sailed away on a 53-foot sailboat, raised our 4 boys for 10 years on the sailboat, and did not pay a penny in capital gains tax and funded our adventures with our real estate income.
That is amazing. You probably know by now that I've left California and I'm living in Costa Rica, where there's some people at my church that have sailboats that they uh, have out here to groups of 50 people or more to float around and see the sunset and all that kind of stuff. So I'm imagining and picturing you and how many children at this point?
Well, we added a couple after we got on the boat, but 4 total.
Oh wow!
So
So
6
4.
people on a sailboat. Yeah, that should be the title of a book by itself.
Yeah, exactly. And you, some of the places that you hung out, Jamaica and some other places.
Went to the Bahamas, the Florida Keys, all up and down the coast of Florida. A very magical place that's accessible to anybody. The Dry Tortugas, just off the coast of Key West. It's an old Civil War fort in the middle of the ocean. One of our favorite destinations.
Oh yeah, wow. So for those who are, I was in the Real Estate Investors Association back in Charlotte, owned a couple of rental houses as well, but didn't. Simple. Let me just say, similar results. didn't work. Didn't work out too hot. But so all that to say, what do people need to know? First of all, you've got the book. Let's talk about the book and how you've laid out exactly kind of what to do.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it was funny. When I started writing the book, Dave, I thought that I was writing a how-to manual because all along for 24 years now, to me, the crying need is education. People
Yes.
don't know it's available. So I've made my mark teaching classes all over the country, educating investors, developing things like the book, our YouTube channel, written resources, because knowledge is power.
Right.
But when I started writing this, I thought that I was writing a how-to manual. As it turned out, by the end of it, I looked at the end result and said, what I really just wrote was one path to reach your dreams. And in this case, the path was the 1031 exchange. And I realized that no matter what your dream is, whether it's a sailboat in the Caribbean or the ability to simply stay at home with your children or the desire to buy an RV and travel around, whatever your dream is, if it involves freedom and independence and you're interested at all in real estate, the 1031 exchange is a critical component to have as part of your, to have on in your toolkit. So that was what ended up happening. And the entire book really centers around what I call the life cycle of a real estate investor. You know, just like we learned in science as kids, where we'd find the caterpillar, you put it into a cage with some leaves, develops a chrysalis, out comes this beautiful butterfly. Every real estate investor starts out as a caterpillar. And as they go through their life, they develop at the end into this beautiful butterfly of an investor. But we start out kind of with nothing, and we got to grow from there. And what's really incredible is that I followed that journey. Many others have. My journey's in the book, and I followed the same path as every investor. Beginning investors, we don't even know what we don't know. And as we go through and we start to get the School of Hard Knocks graduating us, we start to know that there's a lot we don't know. And we start to differentiate and we start to mess and dabble in different kinds of investment until at the end of our career, it's fairly just routine. We know our comfort levels. We know what to do. We know how to do it. And now we're truly maximizing time and we're doing it for us. How would you like to take a little quiz?
Let's do it.
All right.